actually, the boiling point, what we call here, was the fact that the website of the Qatari Foreign Affairs Ministry was hacked, and during that hack they found out that Qatar was directly implicated in financing terrorist activities, which has been considered as one of the major factors of destabilizing the region. Now, that was the direct reason that the UAE and the Saudi Arabia and its allies found as a legitimate reason for them to actually have this embargo on Qatar.
Yes. Was it legitimate?
Just legitimate,
according to you?
Legitimate before the international community, but in general, this does not allow them actually to have this sort of embargo over a tiny country that is considered a major part of that region. However, they were looking for a mean of pressure and a mean of legitimizing their actions. So basically, terrorism is here becoming like kind of the landmark of legitimizing actions within the international community and international actors' behaviors in general.
Yes. If you go back 1 week prior to the Gulf row, Donald Trump paid a visit to Saudi Arabia in one of the biggest events in the MENA region. Does this have any ties? Does this have any relationship to the conflict? To what extent can we consider that Trump has, I would say, any impact or trigger this conflict between the Gulf countries?
If we are to explain states' behaviors, we cannot actually see it just from one perspective. We need to see the general activities that happen in the region. So, of course, the Trump visit to Saudi Arabia is a major component of the legitimizing process of Saudi Arabia action, as it gave them more power. So basically the new American administration was in favor of Saudi Arabia. That's why it gave them more power to act in such way with Qatar. That's it.
Yes. Yeah. Let's now examine some of the demands required by, suggested by the quoted countries, suggesting that Qatar should abide by them. 13 demands, some of them are much more important than the others. For example, Qatar should cut off its ties with Iran. Now, the irony is that there are business going on between the United Arab Emirates and Iran for about $16 billion between the two countries. How can possibly the United Arab Emirates request or demand that Qatar cut ties with Iran while it is maintaining very strong and robust economic and business ties with Iran? How can we possibly explain this?
This demand of Qatar cutting ties with Iran has not been said explicitly. It has been implicitly understood by political analysts because of the very obvious changes that are occurring in the region.
Is it an economically driven
request
or demand? Or there is something else concerning perhaps the geopolitical?
As far as what we observe, it is mostly geopolitical. It's not economic, because we should here draw the line between what is economic and what is political. Economically speaking, they cannot divide or kind of detach from Iran, because the region is rich in oil, so they need to have certain trade investments and trade exchanges with other countries in the region such as, and Iran is a major part of these trade exchanges. However, the problem here is the fact that Syria and countries also such as Turkey and Qatar are aligning with Iran in favor of their own national interests. So this kind of was kind of a trigger to the UAE and Saudi Arabia that it might actually diminish their power and their impact within the region, being the Sunni hegemon in the Gulf region, and eventually it will impact the Middle Eastern, North African region as well, the Arab region in general. So this one was very kind of intricate.
Yeah. Let me bring you another very important and crucial demand by the countries conflicting with Qatar, shutting down Al Jazeera
Yeah.
Channel, right? They have said that it incites terrorism,
Yeah.
along with other media outlets such as the the Middle East Eye. So how can we possibly explain this? Are they? Can we? To what extent can we consider this a very good reason to stop the crisis, to halt the crisis from happening?
It's a good reason for the state, because there are certain steps that they need to take in order to pressure Qatar to stop its ties, or to cut its ties with Iran, which is their ultimate goal. So they started making this economic embargo in Qatar, like contouring it from bringing in other allies. And one of the other means of putting pressure on the region, on Qatar as a state, is kind of preventing its media outlet, which is a major means of propaganda, from propagating its own message and propagating its own rhetoric.
What kind of messages
The rhetoric.
does Qatar perpetuate?
So that Qatar won't have, because we know that Al Jazeera has a major impact.
How can you possibly assess or evaluate the role of Al Jazeera in inciting terrorism, according to you?
Al Jazeera is not inciting terrorism in
because they can't stop
explicitly
stressing enough that Al Jazeera is playing a very bad role concerning instigating and inciting lots of bad things, terrorism and extremism in the region.
Yeah, so, of course, as we know that Al Jazeera is not like directly like influencing the spread of the ISIS in the region, but Al Jazeera is a major ally and a major media tool for the Muslim Brotherhood.
According to you, what kind of ramifications or repercussions or advantages the region could get? I mean, there has been now 6 months of this conflict going on. Lots of economic
drawbacks.
Also, perhaps Qatar. Some say that Qatar has taken benefits of this. Still, others deny that. How can you possibly explain the, I would say, the drawbacks or the results of such actions on the Gulf countries and more broadly on the rest of the countries?
Some of the inevitable repercussions that happened after the Qatari-Saudi Arabian crisis is the fact that other Arab states were actually demanded to take sides when it comes to the crisis. So, for example, in the case of Egypt and Libya, they aligned with the UAE and with Saudi Arabia in this crisis. However, other countries choose to remain neutral, such as Tunisia. Now, here the inevitable repercussion was creating more tension in the region, which is already destabilized by war and by internal conflicts in each country.
Putting countries in very sensitive positions to either side with the quoted.
Yeah, and with Qatar on the other side, which is a major part with other countries.
Concerning this, and since we are Tunisians, now, can we examine the Tunisian stance vis-à-vis the crisis? I mean, Tunisia could have benefited so much from this. How can you assess Tunisian reaction to the crisis?
Tunisia's reaction was actually in perfect alignment with the Tunisian diplomatic tradition. So Tunisian diplomatic tradition is about maintaining neutrality when crises occur between bilateral crisis. So where there are two parties included, especially in the Gulf region, since it is known that the Gulf countries have their own tradition of solving crises. So it was the best choice to remain neutral and to provide and try to incite the conflicting parties to find a diplomatic solution amongst themselves without any intervention from foreign parties. Now here especially it is very important, since Tunisia has both engagements with both parties, so with the Qatari parties and with UAE and Saudi Arabia bloc, like the quartet as you call it.
But the thing is, don't you see that Morocco has benefited from this, has taken advantage of this? Now, as far as I know, that Morocco has given lots of support, food support to Qatar, and as a result, Qatar has lifted visa requirements for Moroccans.
Yeah.
Why didn't Tunisia do the same thing?
Actually, Tunisia did the same thing, but probably not on like a larger scale like Morocco did. So they actually helped Qatar with food and other necessary like raw materials during the embargo period.
Because when we see the thing from a different perspective, we'll see that Morocco has a stronger ties with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Despite this, it has supported Qatar. It has challenged.
It's supported maybe just like from a humanitarian basis, like it's not like directly towards the government. Their help was not directly towards the government, but rather
but they
towards
must
the people.
benefit from this.
Yeah.
Don't you see that we have lost the opportunity to perhaps to seduce more investors, to bring more support from Qatar, since we are siding with them, we are sympathizing with them?
Qatar is already a major partner of Tunisia. It is the second largest like trade partner of Tunisia after the European Union, and also Qatar is a major ally to one of the ruling parties in Tunisia, which is like the Ghada party. So it was in this situation, a lot of actually other parties kind of tried to push the diplomatic alignment of Tunisia to be in favor of the UAE and the quartet. However, our Tunisian diplomats and Tunisian foreign affairs ministry did not want to go towards that direction and maintain neutrality due to the fact that we are having certain national conditions that might make it worse, because it is very important to maintain a certain balance between the Ennahda party and the People's Party, who are allies in power. And as you know, the main part, like the backing up partner of the Ennahda is Qatar, and the other party is the UAE. But in this, like, it was the best solution for Tunisia to maintain its neutrality so that it won't impact its internal conditions.
Yes, however, going on last night's or yesterday's event, where UAE has banned female Tunisians from traveling to UAE.
Yeah.
How can we possibly explain this? Is UAE trying to exercise more pressure than Tunisia can possibly bear, or is UAE trying to pressure Tunisia in order to get much clearer stance vis-a-vis the crisis, or how can we possibly explain this? It's very strange.
To be honest, the decision of the UAE Airlines, they said it's not like the official government positions. The UAE Airlines that prohibited female Tunisians from boarding on their airplanes.
Not from entering the country.
From boarding their airplanes, entering the country, and going through transits through its airports. So it is still unclear of the nature of their decision, because it is a direct infringement of international law. It's basic sexist decision. Tunisia has reacted in kind of also a traditional way by preventing UAE airplanes from landing into this Carthage airport. It did not prevent them from going through Tunisian airspace, but they prevented them from landing in Tunisian airports. So it is still unclear whether this is like kind of a reaction, even though so late, to the Tunisian neutrality position. But if we can like see in other countries, also in the Arab region, the UAE did not have any reaction to other countries that actually also maintain neutrality. So here we cannot kind of link it directly to the crisis between Qatar and the UAE, like the reaction of.
To finish, how can we possibly find a solution to the Gulf crisis? Can Tunisia possibly help them overcome the crisis? Is there any kind of concessions both countries have to make in order to end this? Because lots of countries in the world are demanding that this crisis ends, finishes.
Yeah.
So how can they possibly overcome this?
To be honest, Tunisia does not have enough power to actually mitigate the Gulf crisis, especially that we come from, whether like it's true that we belong to the Arab world, but they are in a region and we are in another region, and each one of these regions have their own traditions. So basically, we mediated before in the case of the Libyan crisis between like the two fractions, that the fighting fractions in the country, because due to our proximity. However, when it comes to Gulf countries, they have their own tradition. That's why Tunisian Foreign Affairs Ministry chose to remain neutral in this situation and kind of incite the Gulf countries to resolve the problem and try to find a solution amongst each other. So that's because we know that Gulf countries have their own mechanisms and their own traditions when it comes to solving crises, and eventually they're going to get over it, and it's going to be our loss. So we're going to lose major partners without actually having an impact. So it is like the basic choice, just trying to incite diplomatic strengthening and trying to find a diplomatic solution, political solution amongst Gulf countries without any foreign meddling within their internal affairs, because we already know that it's going to be a loss for our countries.
Thank you very much for joining me, and best of luck for your exam.
Thank you. You too.